I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for a live webinar hosted by Jibestream, the premier indoor mapping platform provider, and Senyan, a global leader in location-responsive solutions. Today we'll be hearing from Chris Wiegand, Jibestream's CEO and co-founder, Christian Lundquist, Senyan's CEO, and special guest Janette Smrcka, IT Director at Mall of America. With that, Chris, why don't you get us started?
Thanks, Jody, and thank you all for being with us today. It's a pretty awesome group that we have here, and still more joining, so appreciate that. And we know you're all here primarily to hear from our special guest, Janette, and hear about their digital transformation and the journey that they've really been on for many years, as you'll hear today. And I'd like to note that as a person that started this company, 10 years ago, Mall of America is sort of like a professional dream come true. It's always been a place that we really wanted to be at and be contributing to. So I'm just so excited about today, and hopefully you get lots of great information. Before we get into that case study, I would like to talk a little bit about just where we are today in the retail landscape. And we know that things are changing and there's no shortage of pressure. We just want to, sort of go over some of the pressure points that we're seeing, and of course, it's always this constant evolution around improving the customer experience. It has to be intuitive, it has to be frictionless, it has to be engaging, and that's a really changing dynamic every day as the world changes and becomes more real time. And not only that, of course, people like Janette and her peers have to think about how can they be more profitable. And so when we look at that, and we think to ourselves, what could we do to, accomplish all of those goals together? Technology is going to play a really big role there. So let's talk a little bit about that and how we could accomplish it. But first, we're looking at how much technology spend is today and how much it's growing. And these are gigantic numbers, $200 billion and growing, increasing every year as we move forward. Another statistic or another report that I really like is one done by PwC, and it's called the return on experience. And what this means is that you can't just have a place where people buy goods. It has to be a destination that is going to have, dining and entertainment and all these sort of things that are going to build an experience. And you have to be engaging with your customers while they're doing that. And there is no better place in the world than Mall of America for that. And you'll learn a lot more later on when we tell you about the venue itself. But before we get into that, I'm going to turn it over to Christian, and just to give us a little bit of background on what's under the covers and how this technology comes together.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Chris. So a lot of changes are going on in the mall segment, and one can look at this as really as an opportunity. The mall will change from pure shopping site to a travel destination, and successful malls need to personalize the visitor journey. So we have some different kind of visitors. Some may want to make it an experience with a mix of entertainment, shopping, and dining, while others might only want to find a few things as quickly as possible. But at the same time, we shouldn't forget other groups, like, for instance, operations staff that want to find technical equipment that they need to monitor or repair. So to be able to create these different journeys, we need to provide digital tools like that create location awareness, that connect with various other data sources, and I think most important, that are able to be scalable to meet ever evolving business needs. And here it is very important to start with a solid digital foundation on which future features can be built easily. And one such thing to start with is a smartphone. Most people carry a smartphone today. This is an excellent tool to provide a digital virtual assistant that helps personalizing the mall visit. In this case, we have the Mall of America app that was developed by Express Image. The app also contains the Jibestream indoor mapping platform. Jibestream integrates data with indoor maps so you can visualize it in the context of a map. It also gives Mall of America the ability to manage venue data across a global portfolio of buildings. Next, we have Senyon that provides the indoor positioning technology, which enables positioning-related use cases. For instance, showing you where you are, and it helps you find your way through the mall, and it gives you relevant information depending on where you are in the mall. We usually refer to those as location-based services. So, Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit more about other use cases and also about how Jibestream maps can be implemented on various different platforms?
Yeah, thanks, Christian. I think the first thing to say is that the big focus, of course, today is mobile app, and a lot of people are certainly using mobile app. But we also want to note that there is the same information available in different mediums and formats. So, very successful program at Mall of America is their kiosk. I think it's beautifully designed from a sort of hardware perspective, but also the user interface. And they've really nailed it in terms of what I've seen out there from other malls. And we'll hear about this a little bit later, but it's a constant evolution. I think that's an important thing. And so these same maps really become the single source of truth for your mobile app, for your website, for your kiosk. And then I want to open your thinking up to, where else could you use these maps other than just the guest experience? Because that is always the primary driver to start. We'll call it the thin edge of the wedge for the sort of use cases. But once you have the infrastructure, meaning the addressable maps that are digitized and connected, we've got the indoor positioning layer, you've got a lot of data integrations, you now can take these and reskin them with a different user interface, with different authority levels or access levels for not just your guests, but maybe a specialized app for your security guards that have the back of house areas and restricted hallways. We're looking at integrations for camera systems, so security guards can have a visual reference on the map and see the camera sort of status, maybe from what's happening or even the health of that camera. We're looking at different things like work order management. There's a number of tasks that have to be done. So leveraging those same maps, and this is a really important and differentiating feature for Jibestream called profiles. So it's the same map in our content management system, but literally we're turning on and off layers so that you can have different UI and implementation for the different audiences, which, by the way, sometimes is even for third-party sort of vendors that they don't really want to have to go create a map of your venue, but sometimes they do because it means an end, and someone like Janette could provide an API that has that map. This is a great opportunity, Christian, for you to start the introduction on Mall of America and just setting some of the context of this amazing venue.
Absolutely. Since opening its doors in 1992, Mall of America has revolutionized the shopping experience of tens of millions of visitors a year. A leader in retail, entertainment, and attraction, Mall of America is one of the top tourist destinations in the country, and it's known around the world, also here in Sweden where Senyon is based. Chris, I know you have gathered some more data about Mall of America.
Yeah, and if you've never been, first go. It's an amazing place. And it's a gigantic place. So to give you some perspective on just how big it is, there's over 520 stores, a full-size theme park that I think, Janette, you can correct me, about 12 acres, an aquarium, golf course, go-kart track, and by the way, there's also shopping there, I should say, as well. And it truly is a retail destination and entertainment destination. So it's also a massive sort of uplift in the economy locally in Minnesota. So over 40 million people visit there a year, $2 billion in economic impact for the state of Minnesota. So it really is truly iconic. And to maintain their position as a leader is not easy. There's a massive building, a lot of operations, and they've got to continually be innovating. And a big part of that is really this ongoing commitment to innovation around their digital transformation. Now, the person we've all been waiting to hear from, I'd like to introduce Janette to you. She is the IT director there at Mall of America. She has over 20 years experience and really a person that has been pioneering this for a very long time. She's got the scars, bruises, and successes to prove it. So I'll start there and introduce you. Hello, Janette, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. So first, want to get into sort of the background here and, call it unlocking the business potential. When you started out on this journey, really, what were the key things you were trying to solve for?
So, at our core, Mall of America is passionate about providing the best customer experience. So, we've been struggling for a while with a lack of technology in the building. And, I think it really started for us in 2015. At that point, we had intentionally not launched a mobile app because we had no mall-wide Wi-Fi, spotty cell coverage, and we just didn't think we could provide anything that would be unique and valuable to our guests that the website couldn't provide. We knew that wayfinding was a major pain point just due to the scale of our facility and the frequency of new store, dining, and attraction openings. But it was a really challenging thing to wrap our heads around because of the scale of the project.
And so once you decided that you were going to go ahead with this or had this potential plan, of course, every great plan has its challenges and obstacles. What were the biggest things, I guess, you had to think about first or the hardest ones to overcome?
Yeah, kind of like I was hinting at, the first was connectivity. So back in 1992 when the mall opened, it was wired state-of-the-art. Obviously, fast forward quite a few years, and we just did not have the infrastructure that was needed to connect modern technology. We also knew that if we were going to provide Wi-Fi or any other features like wayfinding, it had to be best in class. I think we've all had that airport experience where you connect to Wi-Fi and you might as well not be connected to Wi-Fi. If we were going to do this, we were going to do it right. We wanted to ensure that it was something that we would be proud of and really fit, again, our intention of providing the best customer experience ever. So we, in 2015, we found that partner, quickly built out our Wi-Fi system, and on a parallel path, we also began development of our mobile app with wayfinding.
Well, it sounds like just one small sort of step by step to get started, and part of that is really getting the internal buy-in, and sometimes it's the internal selling that's the hardest. Once you were convinced about this, was it tailwinds or headwinds? Like, how did it go for you internally? Anything you want to sort of bring some context around that, how you're able to get this through your own operations on the business side?
Yeah, it was a real challenge, especially, think back a couple of years, and you would still go to a lot of venues where they would charge you if you wanted to join their Wi-Fi. It was really starting to hit that tipping point where we would consider Wi-Fi very similar to a drinking fountain, right? You don't go to a public environment where you can't, go to the drinking fountain. And so we really felt that it was the same experience. There was an expectation that Wi-Fi would be available for our guests. And with that in mind, it just didn't make sense that we would charge for that. There was no way to monetize this. So, obviously it was a significant cost investment, and one that candidly couldn't be justified, in a tangible, immediate ROI, but one that we felt was exceptionally valuable to us as a property as well as to our guests, and was really going to connect them and enable us to use technologies that we knew we had to start implementing.
I'm so glad that you've now confirmed that Wi-Fi is as important as tap water and drinking fountains. So I guess we'd all agree that it is on the Maslow hierarchy of needs, that Wi-Fi is pretty near the top, or battery life shortly behind it. There's a lot of different ways you could have done this from an infrastructure perspective, technology. What did you consider, and where did you land?
Yeah, so initially we tried to deliver wayfinding with Wi-Fi alone, but despite having a highly tuned system, we discovered that phones will still make bad choices. I equate them, especially Android phones, to teenagers, right? They just do things you don't expect. And so we would find them sticking to various wireless access points, or perhaps, just shortly grabbing the wrong floor before jumping back down. So, if we were to look at a single point in time, it could pinpoint the location, but because people don't stand still in the property, it was clear that Wi-Fi was not going to meet the needs and create the experience that our guests would expect. Fortunately, we had installed the Cisco Halo beacons with our access points. So this did a few things for us. It removed our dependencies on batteries, and for other venues that have done location-based services and wayfinding, we have found that that's a huge pain point, and we've talked to lots of other large venues who initially put in batteries and found out after the fact that, perhaps, if it's a sports venue, they might have gotten through one season, and then they had to replace them. And again, with the scale of some of these facilities, it's not the beacon that costs money, it's the labor in swapping those out. So because ours are connected to the access points, we don't have to worry about power issues. The other benefit for us is we can actually centrally program the beacons. So as you can imagine, again, the scale of the venue, with most systems, you have to walk around and be in line of sight with these beacons to program them. And so for each beacon, the time that takes is extremely extensive. And so for us, we were able to test multiple solutions and see which one could provide the best accuracy for us. And we were able to just adjust the beacon settings centrally again, and then run out those tests. And hands down, Senyan was the one that provided the best accuracy for our guests. But on top of that, they also have technology that leverages the sensors in the phone and its movement to ensure that it really shows the best customer path and the movement throughout the property while minimizing battery usage.
Yeah, and I think we can't underestimate that whole point about how you've approached this. It's really, certainly a hybrid solution. So I love the fact that you've got, the infrastructure there that's, we don't have to worry about batteries. It's all PoE. And then bringing in Senyan to, bring in some additional sort of accuracy and functionality. And as you would tell people, I'm sure, this is not typically a just straight out of the box solution. In a venue, especially like that, the tuning and everything else is so important. So that's a great point to sort of have everybody know, is that sort of sometimes you need to pull a few things together to get what you want, and it all depends on the use case. Now, I'm sure some people are wondering, it's such a huge venue, how many beacons are actually deployed?
So we've got about 600 beacons. So they cover all of the common areas of the mall. So it's not within the stores themselves, but all of the common areas, including the amusement park, which is actually 7.5 acres, not quite as large as you'd hope, but who knows, we'll probably add a new ride soon.
Okay, of course. Thanks for clarifying that. And, reminding you guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's over, 5.5 million square feet, 5.6 million square feet.
Right.
600 beacons. It's actually not a lot of beacons for that size. So then that speaks to sort of how it's tuned, Senyan's technology, and achieving the accuracy you need with what I would consider very few beacons there.
Right.
Now I know that when you're working on a project like this, it's not just about the collaboration of your team and even people in the industry. Through our conversations, I thought I was very interested to hear about how you collaborate with people in your community, other CIOs that are completely unrelated business. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So AmpSync was the vendor that we worked with to put in our Wi-Fi, and they introduced me to the sports and entertainment community through a conference called SEAT. And so I quickly discovered how similar venues were. I hadn't thought about, a baseball or a football stadium as being terribly relevant to us, but we're all facing the same venue and technical challenges because of the scale of our facilities. And so this also connected me with the CIOs of all of the sports teams in Minneapolis, because we have quite a few, although I am a Packers fan. But they still adopted me, and we were able to meet a few times a year and just, swap stories about different vendors we're working with, technologies we're exploring, and we've been able to include other types of venues as well. So now, the Minneapolis airport, a local museum, and even a large casino in town, we're all able to connect even though we have different industries. So the problems are so similar, and I found that, particularly some industries approach them very different ways, and we're able to learn quite a bit from each other, which is amazing.
Yeah, and hopefully if the audience is looking for little golden nuggets, that would probably be one, in my perspective, is to talk to other people that are not just in your industry, and sounds like you've gotten some great value from that. I'm going to turn it back over to Christian here and talking a little bit about, the actual work that was done on the road to digital transformation.
Yes, so you're really one of the innovation leaders within retail. And at least myself, and I think also a lot of you in the audience are interested to learn more about the road and what you have learned along the way on this journey, on this digital transformation journey. So how did you end up with the current technology stack?
Yeah, it has been an extremely agile process. So the more we learn, the more we realize that we didn't know before. For example, when we first started, the whole concept of a mapping partner was completely foreign to us. And again, now as we started using a mapping platform, we quickly realized that we'd actually outgrown it. And Jibestream was such an important step for us to continue our evolution. We absolutely needed a GUI map editor that allowed our team to make real-time changes. And as Chris was saying, those layered maps were so critical for us. We needed to have different maps for security, for operations. But as you can imagine, a facility like ours is so dynamic. And so to ensure that the underlying tenants were always up to date and that we always had context was tremendously important.
Yes, absolutely. This is really an impressive project. And what would you like to say about the timeline, and how long does the project take, and what recommendations can you give to the audience if they are planning for a similar project? What should they expect?
For us, I think once we actually started, the initial deployment probably took about 6 months. But I would also caution that a process like this is never really done. We continue to learn and phase in different elements and enhancements on top of just the day-to-day maintenance that always needs to happen to ensure that your solution stays relevant.
And you have really done this in a very agile way. Have you been able to impact the business along the way, and in what way did it impact your way of working?
Absolutely. I would say the biggest benefit is we now have a single source of truth for our property data. So we actually have an API that drives content across all of our digital channels. And so mapping was certainly one piece of that, but we have other data points as well that really made sense for us to own and ensure were the same across channels, that we were always communicating the same and ensuring that data was always up to date.
Okay, so what I also like to hear a little bit about are your personal experience from this journey. Do you have any anecdotes that you could share? Some funny moments along the way?
Well, I would say, it's not just a tool for our guests. I have to admit that I use it myself. The last time that I needed to look up a store, we were actually going to own and operate a new store within the mall, and I had no idea where this was located. And so I was able to quickly use the wayfinding to find out where this was and give me context within the property. So even though I live here, it's such a dynamic property that I can't always keep up.
Oh,
well, I'm not going to feel bad next time I use the the wayfinding tool there. If you're getting lost, then as the wayfinding person, you feel like some sort of onus to never be lost in a building, but it certainly does happen for me. I want to go back to a little bit about when you said the project is really never done, and I totally agree. It's always an evolving situation. It's not something you set and forget. And a big part of that, and I think again, as a pioneer and leader, you guys are actually looking at the data that's being collected and starting to make some decisions based on that. And I thought it was really interesting how you tackled that too, with your partnership with the university. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we put in Wi-Fi in 2015, I think one of the things that we were extremely passionate about is being able to use and understand the data. And so we were actually able to reach out to Carleton University and their Master of Data Science program. And they were just in the beginnings of creating a lab and being able to have students work on a semester-long project with real data to be able to create actionable insights. So we were very privileged to be able to get on early on, and the program has continued to grow, and one of the top 10 in the nation. And so, what you see here is just one example of an evaluation that we did with them on Wi-Fi data. So being able to look at different sections of the property and see, hey, if a guest goes to section A, how much more likely are they to visit one of these other sections? And so obviously, as you can see, there's some sections that guests are pretty likely to also visit, others that they might not. So, an example might be, hey, if you go to the amusement park, where else do you go? If you stop in the food court, where else do you go? So those are really exciting things for us to learn and understand about guest behavior. And again, we're passionate about the privacy of our guests. So what we really try to focus on is aggregating information and being able to learn from that contextually and provide a better experience back to our guests. So we've continued that relationship with the university, and it has really changed the culture of our property as well. So I think because we've got a lot of smart folks who have been here a long time, we would frequently use our intuition on what might be the best item for us to use. Now when we're making decisions, we tend to really use data to drive those decisions. So if you pop back one, you'll actually see some stats from our digital directories that Chris had mentioned earlier. So we have about 100 wayfinding directory kiosks that are available throughout the property. So for those who might not be comfortable downloading a mobile app or just want something physical, tangible to be able to interact with, they can use these to find their way through the property. And so you can see here, we're able to look and compare two stores. And if we look at different levels or different locations throughout the property, we can see how searches compare across different areas of the mall. So we can slice and dice a lot of things and learn quite a bit. But it's been an amazing relationship.
I think it's amazing because a lot of people, there's so much data available, people are collecting it, but it's very different when you're actually doing something with it and gathering the insights. So that seems like a very happy accident or fortunate thing that you were able to partner to get that program started. And it's, I'm sure, an evolving situation as more and more data becomes available. And you said that I think this is also getting brought into Power BI, correct? So sort of taking data from lots of different sources. And that to me is really a better way to look at the story because, clicks on a kiosk can tell you one thing, but when you combine that with all of your other data sets, I think that's sort of where the interesting stories and, sort of different things you can sort of take from them and then ultimately action them. So that maybe that's a great segue. Yeah. Let's have a look at the app, and I'll just, prod me along here when I go through, but I'm sure not everybody's been or seen the app. So tell us a little bit about this and what we're looking at in terms of the user experience.
Sure, absolutely. So as we've hinted at, right, wayfinding is certainly a part of our app. So guests that have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi enabled are able to navigate the property in real time and see contextually where they are. So just a great experience, whether you're a first-time visitor or like myself and trying to find a store that you had never been to before because it might not be open yet, you can find where you're going.
Okay. And digital concierge?
It has been a huge thing for us. So in the back end, this is actually a texting platform, and we have live people, yes, live people that are responding to these texts during business hours. And so one of the things that's really valuable about this is it really allows us to have personal conversations with our guests. So if you ask us where you would recommend that you have ice cream, the person that answers will tell you their favorite place to have ice cream, or perhaps one that's closest to you, because again, our passion is providing you with the best possible experience.
Wow, that is amazing. And not to give away any future secrets, but is there a plan to maybe do AI with this, like a bot or anything like that, or is it sort of, and I also love the personal touch, so just curious.
Absolutely. So we did layer in a bot actually last year, and so that's able to answer some of those common questions. And then we have based keywords, so depending, the bot will only answer things that it's confident that it has knowledge of. Otherwise, we'll throw you straight to a live person to make sure that you get your question answered in a very personal way.
That's awesome. Okay, and plan your perfect day.
Yeah, and I think this really speaks again to our API. And so again, we've got content like this on our mobile app, on our website, some of it on the digital directories. And so all of these are part of our API. And so whether you're interested in stores, you want to save some money, or attend one of our 400 events that we host annually, you're able to grab this information and be on your way.
Amazing. I was told yesterday by somebody that 25% of the time we spend driving a car, I can't validate this, is actually looking for parking by some of the statistics. So tell us, are we solving that problem, or what does this do?
Absolutely. So this helps. So if once you've parked, you're able to find a few options to remember where you parked. You can text it in, write a note, take a picture. We also have some stall-by-stall reservation and obviously valet. So trying to make your life easier. Fortunately, this is actually getting used a little bit less because we've also introduced some stall-by-stall wayfinding. So guests are quickly able to find their parking and get into the building with a little reduction in that time that they spend driving around, which is fantastic. We actually did some stats in this last holiday season. After we installed the platform, we've reduced the times that we've had to shut down our parking ramps because they were full by 67%. So trying to relieve that pain point for you.
That is definitely huge. And it is a good point that if there is any kind of smart parking systems that you have, something like Park Assist or something, we can actually connect with that and show people where actual spots are available. It all depends on how you want to do that. And what we would do in a fully connected situation is geocode the parking lot or spot that you're going to go to is really based on where you're going inside. So from home, you might search for a store name versus the mall name, and then we guide you to the closest parking spot, if that's something you have available to you in terms of the infrastructure or data. I'll turn it back to you, Christian, just to talk a little bit about what's next. So we've seen what's there now, and what can we expect into the future?
Yes, so thank you, Janette, for sharing a lot of the current features and also describing the background. That was really interesting to hear from you. Next, I'm very curious to hear more about your future plans. What else could the solution do for you?
Absolutely. I think we continue to layer in more items, and part of that was getting onto the Jibestream platform really opened the doors and gave us a lot more flexibility with what we could do. So we actually are actively working to add more operational layers to our maps. So for example, our engineering and security teams are looking to put locations of sensors into searchable maps. So an example is if we get an alert for a water flow that's taking place overnight, right now they have to flip through a binder of paper to find where that sensor might be. All the while, water is leaking into the building and creating a mess, right? So for them to be able to quickly search that map, find the location, dispatch a team, and resolve the problem is going to reduce the time that we spend getting that problem fixed. And I think it also provides a lot of opportunities for new staff and creating routes. So, for example, it would be great to be able to leverage Senyan and the maps to tie this together for our staff. So we can put a new person on the job, give them the app and say, hey, go take care of these 3 preventative maintenance tasks. We'll see you in 2 hours. Text us if you have any problems, and let them go, which would be fantastic.
So what really amazes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Christian.
No, I was just saying. So it's not all about visitors. There are also functionalities for other groups of users.
Absolutely. I think, although our original intent was for the guest experience, we're finding that the functionality and the platform that we've created has a lot of opportunities for ROI operationally. And so we're just starting to dive into those and are very excited to keep those going.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
so, Chris, please.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's just as much as it is definitely a shopping destination, entertainment destination. Christian and I look at things, buildings now as smart buildings. There, so many different things going on. When we talk about layering in these other use cases, we can sort of bucket that into IoT because it really has to really involve interoperability open data and really dynamic in terms of how things are being updated. And as much as there's a content management system and it's easy to use, our goal is really to have all of that automated. There should be a REST API for your elevators and cameras and everything else. And it's a path, and you have to go step by step. But I think certainly Mall of America is at the front of that pack, which you have been since, I think the early 90s. And whatever you're willing to share, maybe I'll flip over to the next slide and talk about sort of what the people in the audience today should be considering when they're starting a project, and what wisdom you can impart on them.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is to really do your research, being able to talk to others and folks that you feel like you can trust. I think we heard a lot of great sales pitches about amazing technology that we could put into the building, and still do. But for us, being able to talk to other facilities that are using the technology and really being able to understand their experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think being able to understand challenges that they might have faced with a vendor and how they overcame those. Inevitably, there's bumps in the road, right? You need to make sure that you've got a good path through those, as well as site visits. So, I think for us, we saw a lot of different technologies and looked at them firsthand and found a lot of things that, didn't match what our experience needed to be. And so it can be different for everyone. And I think being able to experience those things and understand what you like, what you don't like about different features and functionality really helps you shape the vision of what it is that you need. I think one of the other things for us was defining our project goals and being really strategic about what it is that we need to attain in the short term, and making sure that we've got those success metrics, and that we stay focused. I think it's so easy to have that scope creep, and one of the beautiful things and terrible things about Jibestream, right, is there's so many things that you can do with it, but you've got to start somewhere. So ensuring that we start with this small subset of tasks that we need to implement, and then have that roadmap, which constantly changes, right, of the different things that can come next. And then I would say another big, huge critical piece for us was the data architecture and creating that strategy. So all of this, again, I've heard data is the new bacon. It's just so important to ensure that you've got your data architecture defined in a way that it's scalable, really strategic, is going to allow you to slice and dice things in the way that you need. And can't emphasize enough how critical that is to really take the time to map that out.
Yeah, and that is excellent information for people who are, just at the beginning or planning their project. And I will always advocate that, as much as all of this is, on a backbone of technology, not just because you're on the phone, Janette, but I have to say, it's just the team and your approach. We've been so impressed, and it's not only an ambitious goal, but you're also very pragmatic about it, and you understand technology, and that's really, once you get the contracts done and everything else, you're partners, and it's collaboration, and that's really important in these projects, is that having a good partner network. Sandy and Jibestream had worked together before in other projects, and there's a lot of layers there. So first, thank you for being such great partners, and congratulations on achieving this. I know you're probably always slightly frustrated, because frustration can be a good thing. You want it to be better all the time, but what you have there today is pretty amazing. And I think that's really up to, or due to, just constantly evolving and innovating on that roadmap. I'm going to just pause for a minute and have Jody do one last poll before we end out. And just to get a sense of people's timing, are you just starting or already started a project 0 to 3 months, getting started, maybe a little bit further out, or maybe you're just sort of considering this now? And so we've got most people actually in the 3 to 6 months. So this is a perfect time for this planning, and hopefully you were able to get some good nuggets out of this webinar to really take us up on what we'd like to offer you as what we call a discovery workshop. So this would be something we would schedule with your team members. And before we start talking about technology and infrastructure and all that stuff, we really want to break it down to what are the goals that you have, what are the pain points, and then we start to build in solutions after that. So we'd love to help you, whether, certainly no obligation. We want everybody to be on the same playing field. So if we can help you define your requirements and help you along the way, wherever you end up, we'd love to be there at the beginning with you, and of course, deploy just like we have with Mall of America. And please get in touch for that. So I'd like to thank certainly Janette and Christian and everyone for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Jody to close us out.
Great. Thank you, Christian and Janette, and everyone for joining us here today. We hope that you found the session informative and were able to walk away with some tidbits of information that you can apply to your own project.